In a previous video, I was explaining that the coil in this starter is bad, so I had to stop and pick up a new coil, and we're going to replace that today. In this particular style, there's a couple metal clips down in here, and what you do is you pull those clips apart, and it just releases the coil from its holding position, and then you just kind of slide it out. So that looks a little burned up to me. So here's the new one, and what we're going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm using a 110 volt power supply rather than a 220 volt power supply. So I want to change and install these jumpers to make this 120 volt coil instead of a 220 volt like it's wired right now. In this particular case, this is where the hot and the neutral will go on this. So I'll loosen these up. Take one clip, move it over to this position, the other clip, move it into this position. Tighten that up. I'll tighten this one up. I'm going to leave these two loose right now because I still have to mount the wires. Slide the magnet through here. Lift this back up. Slide it down in there until you hear the click. And those two pins those two flanges just snapped in there. This particular case, that's all it takes to change this coil. So I'm going to go ahead and hook it up to 110 right now, and we'll check it out and make sure that it functions and holds okay. If there's anything else we need to take a look at on this contactor, make sure everything's functioning correctly. One of the guys wrote in already, wanting to know what the LEDs were for. The LEDs is for visual purposes, so that I could show you the difference between a normally open and a normally closed contact. This particular video, I'm not going to include that in there. All I'm doing is testing the coil. I had another viewer write in and wanted to know if it made a difference on which side you put the hot or the neutral on the coil. And depending on your applications, really it doesn't make a difference. It's all it is just a coil that creates a magnetic field and pulls the contactor in. Another one was a lot tighter that I pulled out of there. And I think because it was all exploded out and expanded there. So I will plug this in. So I'll test this out. And that's it. I'll show you the components of this. I'm putting together a PowerPoint presentation for what all this does, but for right now you've got your coil on top. It could be a 120 or a 220. You have your main contactor here. This particular unit is a three-phase. You have a set of normally open auxiliary contacts and normally closed auxiliary contacts, and that's what will end up operating the red and green lights. And then down here you have electronic overload. The load wires will go up through the bottom, tie into here, and then as you saw earlier, what happens is that coil gets sucked in and it changes this to a normally closed, changes this to a normally open, and closes the connection between the line and the load. In the next video, I'll get into a little bit more detail on the rest of the contactor. But for now, I'm going to get going here and get this uploaded, and then we'll come back and we'll do the rest of this.